So we're here at Essentially Water. I'm joined by Dr. Anouk Gouvras from the Natural History Museum in London. Anouk, thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed at short notice. Obviously this first session that we've just had, disease focus session, is really looking at behaviour change, the role of behaviour change within endemic communities, from a WASH perspective, from a transmission interruption perspective, from many different points of view, but it all comes down to behaviour change. Underpinning that, in our opinion, science communication. So I wanted to ask you, what do you feel is the potential role of an institution such as the Natural History Museum, who are very much focused on bringing science to the public? Are there best practices? Are there lessons that can be applied to settings such as Zanzibar?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's a topic that is actually very close to my heart. I am a big advocate of the power of public engagement in science and what that can do in terms of opening a dialogue with communities, with schools, with people that actually decide on policies as well. It is incredibly important, and the museum is, in terms of a British setting, is absolutely great at that. There is a real desire with science communication for it to be a dialogue. So it was identified quite a while ago that people don't want to just be told, this is how things happen, this is what you should do. They are much more interested in having a dialogue with scientists, with experts, for them to say what they understand and what they think, have that listened to, but also to take from scientists and from experts to take information back. So this is something that the museum has always looked to do. It's always tried to find ways to bring the massive collections and expertise that we have at the museum, all those insects and amphibians and dinosaurs and all these collections that we have, the expertise that we have there, the scientists that research and curators that research these amazing collections, and bring that to the public, and the public being able to interact with that, really own that information and understand that information and be interested by that information. And we've got a great team that, the public engagement team at the museum, that finds new and inventive ways of interacting with the public and opening dialogue with the public. And I think that there's a real opportunity to bring that to countries that have infectious diseases, endemic infectious diseases. Because we do have a problem where we're going in and saying, you have this disease, you must take this drug, you should avoid this. Yeah. But if you're not listening, it's not going to last. And if you're not getting information from them, it's not going to last. Yeah. And if you're not increasing a demand for information, for education, and generally for curiosity, that's not going to be sustainable. So some public engagement in science in endemic countries that are suffering from infectious diseases could do a lot. That is my belief anyway.
So beyond the belief, obviously you said that's your opinion, beyond the belief, you've seen all morning in terms of the gathering amount of evidence in terms of what an informed public, the effect of an informed public on disease burden. So I think it's absolutely fair to say that the role of behaviour change and an informed public is going to play a bigger and bigger role in the future. It's very encouraging to see that. What would be really interesting to find from you is the types of collaborations that we'd have in mind. Your colleague Steffi talked about mosques, address the religious community in Zanzibar, the schools. We've seen the success of the Carter Centre's eradication program, largely on the back of non-pharmacological intervention, on the back of behaviour change, right? How much of a pivot point between the harsh worlds of anthropological science, parasitology, clinical trials, you name it, the hard science world, how much of a pivot point between that and this softer social science of behavioural change, how much of a pivot can someone like the NHM become?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So a lot of the sort of the harder stuff, the way things are done, for example, mass drug administration, sensitization campaigns, those are very targeted, one message and one directional information, education, health intervention sort of strategies, where they're going in and saying, like, you know, there's this disease, take this drug, you will be better. And they're very important for a single disease, for a single intervention. Whereas when you're looking at behavioural change, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be more of a dialogue. Like you said, Steffi, who talked about behavioural change in Zanzibar for schistosomiasis elimination, works with a brilliant behavioural scientist called Bobby Person. And she has really developed the behavioural intervention teams there to go out into the communities, talk to the communities about the disease, but also hear from them, what do they want to do about it? So they know about the transmission cycle. What are the solutions they propose? And some things are stuff that we did expect, some things are stuff we didn't expect. And you also bring in the fact that mosques are very important, and that's it, that leaders of communities are hugely important. And mosques and imams play a huge role in getting the messages across of how your behavior can lead to a happier, healthier life. Which is vastly important, but we almost need to expand to more than this. So this is all targeted, one disease, one behavioural change, or linked, associated behavioural changes to one disease. Whereas in what we've seen is that neglected tropical diseases and more diseases all have things that are linked. So whether it's water, whether it's poverty, they're all linked together, and you need to open a dialogue with communities that will enable you to talk with communities, bring ideas to communities and get ideas from communities, generally about science, about health, about the link between the two, make them curious about it, make them interested about it, and you can actually get behavioural change that is much more long-lasting, that has much more of an interest, that crosses generations. So you're including here adults and children that will then pass on to younger generations, new generations. These sort of things need to be much more inclusive, much bigger than just one disease interventions. And that's what public engagement can do, and that's what the role of museums that really look at how to bring science to the public, how to bring research to the public, whether it's the Natural History Museum that looks at the environment and the link between the environment and biodiversity and health. That's a role that the Natural History Museum would be perfect at. But also looking at Science Museum, which has brought us the world of space and all these sort of things. Museums are great at bringing science to the public, and there really is a role there. And what would be great would be to bring in collaborations in countries, endemic countries, with their museums, with their creative industries, their theatre groups, when they could do festivals or music festivals, just really bring in the creative arts, because creative art is such a great way of getting that community dialogue, and bringing in science as well. As science always is seen as something that is the opposite of artistic and creative, and that's totally not true. It is all linked to creativity, and there is a real need to link in this creativity and this dialogue with communities.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating to hear the potential evolutionary trajectory that the museum, the role of the museum in today's modern connected world is following. That's a fascinating perspective on it, and it's a very powerful perspective. You've mentioned intergenerational nuances in terms of getting a message across. we've seen that a lot of these communities are linked by being highly social in terms of social media in some cases.
Yes, yeah,
and
absolutely.
highly mobile,
Yeah.
right? In the sense of communicating with each other through local phone networks, whatever, the internet. And I just wanted to ask you, what type of bandwidth are you thinking of in terms of getting a message across? I know that you've put a film out, Parasites in Motion.
Yes.
I mean, is that the type of medium the NHM are exploring?
We are exploring different mediums, and the public engagement group have probably fantastic ideas that I don't even know about on how to bring the research we do, the parasite research and the neglected disease research we do to the public, but something that can cross geographical barriers. For example, as you said, social media and online media is a great tool, and something that was done recently. We had an event called Parasites Day, where we brought all our parasite collections and parasite expertise, particularly the worms, my thing, to the public, and got, the parasites are something that children just love, it was very popular. But something that the museum made, the media content part of the museum made, is a video where a child explains schistosomiasis, and it's online, it's freely available on YouTube. And you can listen to this child explaining quite simply using this stop motion video how schistosomiasis is transmitted. And what we would like to do with this video is translate it into different languages, translate it into French, into Kiswahili, into Hausa, and then it would be freely available for countries, teachers, museums to use it as they see fit, whether it's in classrooms or whether it's in a festival or any sort of thing like that.
Again, absolutely fascinating, and I don't want to use this horrible word ever, but we are in a post-Brexit world, and the reach we're hearing from people as far afield as DFID to multinationals, to small NGOs, that it's all about now making those connections, making those collaborations to the world, right? So absolutely fascinating timing. I mean, you mentioned briefly there the types of collaborations potentially that you'd probably, you'd anticipate with the university, with the NHM would move towards. Obviously, you're here at ISNTD Water today. Are there any particular NGOs or any particular bodies or people you're trying to reach out to while you're here?
I should have done a lot more research before doing this interview, because they are, but I am terrible at names.
Areas.
So there are a lot. It's very public engagement in science, and also generally science research in sub-Saharan Africa is really taking a huge leap forward. So there's all sorts of things like the next Einstein. To be an African, that's one sort of initiative that's going through. South Africa has loads of public engagement in science, and I would. There's also the science, the African Science Academy that's got loads of stuff there too. And I mean, I would really love to be able to do collaborative work with theatre groups and festival groups, and to bring like a science festival to endemic areas, bringing in the creative arts to explain about transmission or these sort of harder things to get through, but also bringing in things like there's a thing called a foldoscope, which is like a foldable paper microscope, and I think that would just be wonderful. With the research that we did, just different research that I do on parasite DNA at the museum, I go and visit 15 schools in Tanzania, and the museum has its own a sort of museum-made microscope, toy microscope that children can use. And I took that out as a sort of thank you to the schools for letting us do the surveys in their schools. I brought 2 of those microscopes to each school, just as a thank you. And they're very small, and But it's great to see them holding the little microscope and just looking at leaves, looking at the structure of a leaf, or looking at an insect wing under a microscope, and that already brings curiosity. Curiosity not only there's a curiosity there at the microscope that can do this, and what kind of technique and technology does the microscope use, so that is also very useful. But then also about the actual structure of the leaf, the biology behind it, really bringing biology to life. And you can see how you could maybe also expand that to use it with looking at water. What is in your water? What is in the water you drink? You know, and that's what infects you. You know,
well,
that would be great.
Fascinating catalysis point that we've reached in terms of informing publics, whether they're here in the G7 countries or in endemic countries. And I am actually blown away by the potential role of museums, and I'd like to say thank you very, very much for making the journey here, engaging today, and for agreeing to be interviewed at totally short notice. Thank you very, very much indeed. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.